Welcome to the second episode of the Legislative Lens podcast. I'm your host, Rob Leatherwood, Government Affairs Director for the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors. And with us today is our guest, Supervisor Matt LaVere. Thanks for being with us, Matt.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Rob.
Well, let's get right into it. Let's get to know you a little bit. You're a native Ventura County resident, native Ventura son. You went to Pepperdine, as I'm attending right now as well. What led you to initially decide to run for office?
I'll try to give you the executive summary. Again, you're right. Born and raised in Ventura in Ojai. My mom was born and raised here as well. And, my mom and I often talk about how privileged we are to be living here in Ventura County. I truly believe this is heaven on earth. And it's, a privilege to be raising my daughters here now. And it's something that I never take for granted. I love it here. But to answer your question about how I got into politics, it's kind of a circuitous route because I left college and always wanting to come back home. And I graduated from college, as you said, I went to Pepperdine. I was Dean's List. I thought I had done everything right. And I came back around the year 2000 and realized there was just very little opportunity for young people at that time. Very few jobs and also very little affordable housing. And that led me to pursuing jobs elsewhere. And I ended up in Washington, D.C. for 3.5 years, had a great time working back there, both positions in the White House and on Capitol Hill. And it was law school that brought me back to California. And ultimately, it was my law degree that enabled me to come back to Ventura County in 2006 and get a job and kind of start my life here again. But when I left D.C., I thought politics was something in my past. I was pretty burned out at that time of politics at the federal level. Came back, was starting my career as a young lawyer, got married, and then I had my first daughter in 2013. And at that point, for those of the people watching this or listening to this who have kids, they know having that first child really recalibrates your worldview. Sure. And you enter a very much less selfish existence. And so I had my first daughter in 2013, and I really started looking around. And at that point, I'd been so focused on my career and my marriage. And I realized at that time, 13 years after I initially tried to come back to Ventura County, that there was still so little opportunity for young people in Ventura County. And I was thinking, in 20 years, when my daughter is finishing college and hopefully wants to come back, what's going to be available for her? And I realized in 2013 that just so little had changed. And that's what initially got me back engaged in local politics, was that I looked at the city council that time, and there was very few young people on council. And I looked at the council, and they were very experienced, very knowledgeable, but they're at different stages of life. And I just didn't see that someone was on council making decisions about the future of Ventura, with first and foremost priority being future opportunities, or current and future opportunities for young people. And that's what really got me back involved, was trying to represent the young professionals in Ventura County at an elected office, trying to make decisions which in 20 or 30 years would create these opportunities for people.
I love that answer. And, you always hear all politics is local. So you've worked at the federal level and at the local level. I don't know how much experience you have. Did you ever work at the state level in Sacramento?
Never at the state level.
So I've worked at all three now, and I 100% agree that all politics is local. If you're really interested in affecting change in your community, that's where you need to be. Would you agree with that statement? And what made you decide on city council specifically as the best avenue to affect change in your community?
I think, what happens at the federal level is obviously important. You're dealing with foreign relations, you're dealing with big federal issues. But I think what the issues that impact people on a day-to-day basis, it all starts local. Right. When you're looking at the ability to afford housing, when you're looking at the conditions of roads and streets, when you're looking at the access to parks and open space, all of those decisions are made locally. And that's what got me excited about city council, was I saw city council as an avenue where I could really affect change that would impact people's lives on a daily basis. Jobs, housing, quality of life, that's all local.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, the things they do, to your point, in D.C. or Sacramento are important, but the decisions that are made down at City Hall between the Planning Commission, the Design Committee, City Council affects people's lives a hell of a lot more than anything that's happening in Sacramento or D.C. on a day-to-day basis.
And it's a lot more personal issues too. I mean, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, those are important issues. But when you wake up in the morning, you're probably thinking about, do I have a job? Can I afford my house? And do I have a park to take my kids to? Those are the issues which I think are really personal to people. And that's where City Council plays such an important role.
Well, and in working in local politics gives you an opportunity to directly serve your neighbors and directly see on a day-by-day basis the changes that the policies are making in their lives.
Yeah, it's somebody. I forget which president it was, and they were asking him, "Is being president hard?" Or maybe it was a senator. It was somebody who had previously been a mayor.
Okay.
And they said, "Yeah, this job's hard, but try being a mayor."
Right.
Because when you can't go to the grocery store, you can't go to church, Little League.
Oh, yeah, all of it.
You're involved in issues that are very intimate and very personal to your neighbors, to your community. And it's a big job. And people expect a lot out of their city councils, as they should.
Well, yeah, you don't get to make decisions for hundreds or thousands of miles away. Like, you get to make a decision right in front of your friends and your neighbors, and then you get to live with the consequences of that decision in the rest of your life, in your community. So on that, what are you most proud of during your time on Ventura City Council? What was the accomplishment that you either individually pushed across the line or something that the council and or city did that you're particularly proud of?
I was really proud of my time on council, not because of anything particularly that I did, but what we as a council did. Because when you're on city council, in Ventura, you're one of 7. And so you could have the best idea in the world, but unless you get 3 of your colleagues to come along with you, it's not going anywhere. And that's why city council, to me, was so much fun. It's building bridges, it's building relationships, it's collaborating with your colleagues, and everything you do is team effort. I love that about local politics. But I think the defining event of my time on city council was obviously the Thomas Fire.
Sure.
And I still look back. It feels like yesterday, and we're coming up on the 7th anniversary.
Yep.
And leading the community through the Thomas Fire recovery was something that I'll kind of never forget the rest of my life. The challenges of that, people who had woken up the day after the fire and realized that they had nothing left, and knowing as an elected official that there's going to be no easy fix, right, no immediate fix, but just having the ability to get to know people, to get to know what had happened, and figuring out solutions to rebuilding the houses and the issues, all of the recovery issues of the Thomas Fire. It was I think it will go down as one of the biggest challenges of my life, but something that I look back at and say, that's something that we as a community got through, and it was an honor to be a part of that process. But besides the Thomas Fire, some of the things I was particularly proud of was that we were able to open the county's first 24/7 emergency homeless shelter.
That's extremely cool.
Homelessness today remains a challenge. Still a lot of work to do, but when we were on council, we were able to open up that shelter. And besides the pandemic, it's been nearly full ever since we opened it. We as a council had heard from the business community and also just local residents about challenges in our planning, in our building and safety departments. And we commissioned a study, and we got a matrix report back, which basically gave us 40 items on a checklist that we needed to work through to improve our process. And we were able to really start some good work on making those changes. We were able to really put a refocus at that time on roads and sidewalks. And so that we did a lot of work on that. And those are kind of the things I remember.
So for our audience, can you define like a matrix report? Is that like a comprehensive study? How does that work?
Yeah, we had heard so many stories, but we said this isn't a piecemeal problem. We have to look holistically, kind of at the structure of our planning and our permitting process. And so we commissioned an independent consultant to come in and to do a deep dive on our planning process, on our permitting process, on our building and safety process. Best practices, where are the backlogs? What's creating these delays? What can we be doing better as city government to help people who are going through this process, or businesses going through this process. And we got this report back, and it essentially gave us, I think it was about 40 items, gaps in our system that we needed to start working on. Some of them were low-hanging fruit. Some of them required more structural change. But we got that report back. I think I was 2 or 3 years in to my term, and that last year or so, we really started going through and prioritizing those items that we could work on. And I know the city at this point is still continuing to work on it. It takes time with some of these things. But the fact that we got that study back and it gave us a blueprint moving forward, I thought that was really important.
Now you know what problems to go fix. You have a roadmap. So compare and contrast for us, please, your time on the Board of Supervisors with your time on City Council. How is it different and on the supervisors? And what so far in your first term have you been most proud of that the supervisors have gotten done?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's night and day, but it's a big difference. I mean, government is government in many ways, and we have similar issues and concerns. Both the county and the city have, police departments, fire departments, public works. But when I was at the city, I thought it was a real big organization. We had about 650 employees, about a $330 million budget. I think it was at that time 8 departments within the city government. And I got to the county, and the county has 27 departments, now 10,500 employees, and we just are about to adopt our budget, and it's going to be a little over $3 billion.
Wow.
So the county is a massive organization. And yes, we have police and fire and public works, but we also have airports and jails and hospitals and human services, social services, animal services. The county touches people's lives in so many different ways beyond a city, just because that's what counties are set up to be as a function.
So I actually live sort of over by the government center, and I like to go for a walk after dinner. And I was like walking by the government center the other day, and it occurred to me, as sort of like a political nerd, some people like touring baseball parks, all the baseball parks across the country. I like hitting state capitals. Our government center is bigger than some state capitals, like in terms of like square footage.
It's a massive complex, and that's just one of hundreds of county properties throughout the county. When you look at 2 hospitals, 38 health clinics, numerous human services agency offices, behavioral health offices, public health offices, you can't really go a couple blocks in the county and not have some sort of county facility there. And it shows really just the broad scope of all the services we provide.
Well, there's very nearly 1 million people in Ventura County. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot to administrate to make sure that the proverbial trains are always on time, that everything's run like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, people forget. I mean, Ventura County still has a great kind of small town feel to it. That's why one of the reasons I love living here.
Absolutely.
1 or 2 degrees of separation. But people might not realize this. I think it's the 13th or 14th biggest county in the state. We're considered an urban county within the California State Association of Counties. Our meetings are often with LA and San Francisco and San Diego and Orange counties. We're one of the urban counties. And so we're at that unique spot where, we're an urban county, and that gives us access to more resources. But at the same time, we're not so big that we can't keep the charm of living here.
Sure. Well, on that note, what are some of the things that your board is working on right now that residents can look forward to seeing, between now and the end of the year?
I think we as a board of supervisors have kind of set our priorities, and I think if we can kind of highlight some of those priorities, it would resonate with kind of what I'm most proud of. One of those priorities is public safety, because we all want to focus on quality of life, and you can't have a quality of life without feeling safe. And so we've really tried to prioritize public safety. We've bolstered our fire department. We've strengthened our sheriff's department. We've added more police officers to the sheriff's ranks, funded more positions, recognizing what I feel and what my colleagues feel is a real desire from the community to keep Ventura County safe. And we have just world-class firefighters and police officers here. It's amazing. It never ceases to amaze me, the professionalism of both our firefighters and our police officers. But one thing we just did this year with our sheriff's department is we added, for the first time, working with the leadership of Sheriff Fryoff, we've added a homeless liaison unit to the sheriff's department to solely focus on our county's response to homelessness. And
Is that position like a law enforcement position, or is it more similar to like a caseworker sort of employee?
it's I'm saying hybrid, but they are law enforcement positions.
Sure.
They are sworn deputies, but they're not going out in the normal brown and green uniforms. Their focus is working with social service providers on our response to homelessness, because there is a law enforcement aspect to our homeless response. And I think the city of Ventura had a really they have a patrol task force, which is similar to the new unit we just created. And really the goal of this is it's not a heavy-handed law enforcement approach. If we have to, it's there. But the priority approach is getting to know these individuals, responding to calls with the intent of helping, not arresting. And it's getting to know. I've learned through my 8 years almost in elected office now the importance of building trust and building relationships with those individuals living in our streets, because they're not going to accept help until they trust you, and that doesn't happen overnight. And so that's what our social services providers have always done, is tried to build those relationships. And I think our law enforcement officers are taking that same approach. And with our patrol task force, they knew most of the individuals living on the streets of downtown Ventura by first name. And sometimes it took a while, but there's a lot of success stories out of that program. And I think the sheriff's office wants to create a similar program countywide.
Well, it sounds like Ventura might have some insight that they can offer in terms of best practices, and I hope that the county will reach out to them for that.
Oh, our law enforcement agencies talk all the time. There's great regional collaboration between our police departments, our sheriff's office. And, speaking of homelessness, I think that's another priority of this board. We as a board of supervisors, just last November said, we've been kind of trying the same thing for about 10 years, and we weren't seeing results. We were only seeing the problem get gradually worse. And we have amazing professionals at the county, at the cities do as well, working on our homeless issue and trying to make a difference. And so we actually just commissioned a report last November, December, similar to what we did at Ventura with the matrix report for the planning department. We said, let's take an independent, holistic look at our response to homelessness and see, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Where are the gaps? And really, at the end of the day, how can we most effectively spend taxpayer dollars to make a difference? And we got that report back several months ago, and that was really enlightening, because what we were essentially told was that for us to really start making a difference here in Ventura County on the problem, we need more housing. Our gap is affordable housing.
Well, I love that you brought that up, because that's a great segue to my next question. So, was it like 1 or 2 meetings ago? We did the report on the poll for the affordable housing bond. So there's a few things that I'd like to sort of dissect here. Let's start first with explaining the need for this bond. Can you walk our audience through sort of how affordable housing is funded traditionally, and some of the problems that have arisen out of that scenario in Ventura County, and what the problem this bond was hoping to solve?
Sure. In my conversations in the community, I'm out in public every day, often several different locations, talking with the public, talking with my constituents. And the number one thing I kept hearing over and over again in my conversations when it comes to what are people's priorities, it was the cost of housing and homelessness. People were really concerned about the number of homeless they were seeing on the streets, and they were also, I think, individually concerned just about the cost of housing for themselves, their family members, their friends. And so we as a board of supervisors, I was talking with my colleague, Supervisor Lopez, and we said, I wonder if kind of what we're hearing in the public would equate to the need, would people support a bond to help fund all of this housing, which I think everyone recognizes we need. And, affordable housing, the finances of affordable housing are so complex.
It's like our mutual friend Linda Braunschweiger likes to call it lasagna funding, because it's layers and layers and layers of funding.
It's layers and layers.
Sometimes
of
it's actual
funding.
cash. Sometimes it's tax credits. There's a bunch of different ways to make this thing work.
Yeah, because governments, the county, the city, they don't build housing. They create a process and they permit housing. And so, we as a government, we're kind of looking at how can we be a partner in this effort, essentially incentivizing affordable housing developers to start building more projects here. And there's ways that counties can contribute financing to those projects to help incentivize them. I think, taking a quick step back, I think another thing we can be doing is to make our process easier and more affordable as a way of bringing down housing costs.
Are you talking about like deferring impact fees, or what sorts of solutions would you?
Deferring impact fees, I think a big one is just the time of our process. Time is money
Just
in housing
streamline
development.
that process.
They
shorten it.
I think you and I were both at the home conference last year.
Yes.
And I was at a breakout session, and the thing that really jumped out to me during that breakout session was nationwide, the cost of the government process in the overall price of a house is typically 4 or 5%. And that's just the 6 months to a year that it takes to get through the process, and obviously the cost of that money during that year. These are mostly, big construction loans typically, and the cost of those loans. In Ventura County, it was closer to 20%.
Yeah.
And, so 3 or 4 times more than the national average. And that's money. That's, a 15% more of the overall pie, which if we were able to reduce that would help equate to lower costs to the end user, the homeowner.
Right.
So that's another thing the county can be doing. But, Supervisor Lopez and I also understood that taking a bond out or putting a bond out is a big
Sure.
question.
It's
And
a
it's
big
a
ask.
big deal. It's a big ask. And we said, we don't want to just order it, put on the ballot. Before we take that big of a step, let's see what the public thinks. And so that's why we said, rather than just taking a vote to put it on the ballot, let's first pay to have a consultant come in and to poll the public to see if what we are hearing out in our conversations was something that would then equate to agreement from the community to put a bond on the ballot. And so we took that step in, I believe it was late April, and we hired a consultant to do extensive countywide polling, district by district. And essentially the public was asked, would you support placing a bond on the ballot to support affordable housing? And they asked, that question initially, and then they were given follow-up kind of factors of what the bond would do, and then asked the question again. And we got those polling results back at the end of May. And I think the results were telling for 2 reasons. One is the results showed that what I was hearing publicly was widespread, that our public through this polling identified housing and homelessness as the 2 biggest priorities.
And it wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close.
Those 2 items together, I wish I had the chart up, but those 2 items together for our audience were 44% of the respondents.
Yeah, they're clearly the 2 biggest priorities to people in Ventura County.
And then if you added cost of living, which I would argue it kind of overlays that, we're well over 50%. More people than not, they're in Ventura County, their concern is how expensive it is to live here.
Yeah, most of the issues we're pulling at, concerns about law enforcement, concerns about global warming. There's a host of issues. Most of those were pulling about 2 or 3% as a priority issue. Housing and homelessness were both, I think, about 22%.
Yes.
But the other side of the results showed that as much as people were saying these are our 2 biggest concerns, I think they also showed that given the financial climate we're in now, where a lot of people are concerned about inflation, cost of living, just the stressors of really living here in Ventura County and the cost of it, that they weren't ready to tax themselves,
Right.
or to place a bond on the ballot to build more affordable housing.
Well, there was support for it, but it seemed like respondents felt like they're taxed enough already, like they're just maxed out, and so I think the question becomes like, how? Well, I guess that is my next question. Like, what are the next steps here? This isn't going to go forward at this point in time, but that doesn't mean that the need is any less. I was at an affordable housing forum yesterday with the Ventura County Housing Coalition, and of course it was being discussed quite a bit there. What do you think the next steps are? How long do we wait to either tweak this and or reintroduce it for public support?
Yeah, I think I completely understood the results we got back from local residents, because I hear that often too, is that people are just uneasy right now about their financial future, and another tax, another burden is very concerning, and I get that, and because that's just the environment we're in right now with the inflation as it is, with the cost of living here, and so. Does it come back? Maybe if we see the economy really rebound, if we see people feeling more comfortable about their financial situations, maybe 2, 3, 4 years, maybe. It's kind of too early to guess about
Right.
that. But that doesn't mean the problem is going away. The problem is still here. And so I think it just shows, behooves us as county and city governments to keep doing everything we can to incentivize and to hopefully inspire the building of more affordable housing here. And that's something that now we're going to start working on.
Well, certainly there is a need, a tremendous need in Ventura County for affordable housing. I mean, we're a coastal area; it's going to be more expensive. But then you also have the reality that there's a lot of service and tourism sort of folks here that work in those industries, and then of course we have a lot of ag workers here. Those are jobs that just don't pay a lot of money. So as much as it is important to continue building affordable housing, what can or is the county doing to attract better paying jobs to Ventura County?
Yeah, it's the chicken and the egg, because you talk to most CEOs, and their biggest challenge with growing their business, with recruiting and retaining employees, is the cost of housing. But at the same time, it's one of the reasons that we don't have more affordable housing is that our job base here isn't what it should be. We need the jobs, we need the housing, and they go so hand in hand. And what do you do first? And that's why it's so important that we really put these both of these challenges on a continuum, really close to each other, and have to work on both of them hand in hand. And so from a housing perspective, what we're trying to do is make our process easier. We just looked at our planning work plan, the department work plan, and we're moving up some issues where we're trying to tweak our zoning ordinances to make it easier to build housing. The state's doing a lot of that on their own. They're taking away a lot of local control at the state level for those who want to build local housing. You can almost do that by right now.
Well, I want to compliment y'all. So we had, at our association, we have a local government relations committee, and we had Dave Ward out of the Resource Management Agency come and speak with us like a month or two ago. And the county is making tremendous strides on being more user-friendly, making processes easier to get through. They're reevaluating even some of the fees on some of the things that they do. But there's always more work to be done. What sorts of tweaks do you think could still make a tangible difference?
Well, one tweak we just did about a year or two ago was we tweaked our farm worker housing ordinance. We saw that the agricultural sector was critical to our local economy, and that labor was a real challenge for our farmers and ranchers. It was attracting and retaining farm worker labor, and so we tweaked our farm worker housing ordinance to make it easier to build farm worker housing within Ventura County. And we've kind of seen the fruits of that labor. We have one farm worker housing project outside Camarillo,
Right.
which is almost done. We have several in the pipeline. So we're seeing more and more developers bringing in farm worker labor housing to the county, which is going to be, I think, a real boost to our local farmers and ranchers in that part of our economy. And so it's things like that, finding unique issues that we can change that will impact different segments of our local economy. And so we're looking at those issues, and then holistically, we're really looking at our planning and our zoning ordinances as, what can we be doing to reduce that 18 to 20% cost more
Right.
closer to the national average.
Well, it's like you say, it's not just the cost in terms of the actual dollars per fee that a developer gets charged, which those are higher in Ventura County than anywhere else in the state. But it's also the time that it takes to get through the process. I mean, you have multi-million-dollar loan out on a project. You got these quarterly interest payments coming due. You don't even have a shovel in the ground. That's sort of the problems that you're trying to solve? Yeah. I guess my next question would be, the next part is not just the permitting and entitlement process, but we have a labor shortage in Ventura County as well. So if you somehow make it through finding the land, which is hard to find in Ventura County, and then you get through permitting and entitlement, now you got to go find labor to actually do the project. Oftentimes folks are finding their labor outside of Ventura County in different places. What can we do, whether it's like working more with like the trade unions or, fill in the blank, what can we do to incentivize more construction companies to headquarter in Ventura County and get our projects built by local labor?
Well, I think what we need to do is to have more projects here for them to work on.
Okay.
I think one of the reasons you're seeing so much labor leaving the county is because that's where the projects are. I have very close relationships with our local unions in the Building and Trades Council. And we have a close relationship, and we're constantly working on ways that we can get more people, especially young people, into the trades, because it is an honorable profession that pays a living wage.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to, I tell people that college is a pathway for some, but it's not a pathway for many.
Sure.
And so it's what other, technical careers out there are there for people to make a real wage, a wage where you can afford to live and to thrive in Ventura County. And I think the trades are one of those technical careers where we're trying to get more people into the trades. But on the flip side, if we're trying to encourage people to join the trades and to join the labor, we have to also provide projects for them to work on. Otherwise, we're getting them in, and then they're getting shipped off to LA or Kern
Right.
County or other places to build housing there. And it's so important that we have projects locally. And if we could have local people working on them, it's people who are from the community. They can work close to home. They're buying lunch, they're buying gas, they're buying groceries here locally. We get the sales tax benefits of that. Rather than being on the road 2 hours a day, they have 15-minute commutes to the construction site. So it's more time with their families, more time giving back to the community, volunteering with nonprofits, coaching their kids' teams. It's a win-win. If we can.
Well, and it keeps that money local. It circulates it within the community. There's a not insignificant amount of people in Ventura County that are extremely anti-growth. I like to call them bananas, right? Like build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. But I kind of somewhat understand where they're coming from. Ventura County is special, and we want to keep what makes it special here and in place. In your mind, how do you distinguish between growing our communities in a deliberate and strategic and pragmatic way to meet our growing needs? Where do you cross the line from that into just like growing too much?
Yeah, it's I never hide the fact that I'm incredibly pro-growth. But at the same time, I'm also a supporter of the county's SOAR initiative, which protects our open space. And I think that we have to expose certain hypocrisy in some people, because I support SOAR. I don't want to pave over our farmlands. I don't want to pave over our hillsides. I mean, our open space and the beauty associated with that is one of the reasons we all live here.
Sure.
I don't want to lose that. But at the same time, if we're going to say we're not building on our hillsides and we're not building in our farmland, which I don't want to do, that means we have to build in our urban cores. We have to do infill development, and that often means we're going to have to go up a little higher.
And people around here are deathly allergic to that.
Deathly allergic, but you can't have it both ways.
Right.
You can't have it both ways. And people say, oh, why can't we just make it, why can't we just keep it the same? Let's not change anything. And I tell people that's not plausible.
That's not a real thing.
There's no such thing as standing still. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. And if you want to be no growth, that means you're moving backwards.
Right.
And I gave my State of the County address last year for the 150th, and I made the point that some communities, some counties have chosen the no growth model.
Right.
And there's a lot of counties who still have 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people countywide. But if you Google the 10 poorest counties in California, those are the 10 counties. They are all counties that chose no growth.
Shocking.
Growth equals economic prosperity.
Yes.
And we have to be comfortable with where we grow and how we grow.
No.
And if we've decided we're not going to grow on our hillsides and our farmland, great. We have to get over this allergy to building more housing, more dense housing, higher housing.
Well, stuff either grows or dies. They don't stay stagnant for long. It's one or the other. And so, 70% of realtors nationwide contribute to their communities either in terms of time or money. And that number is at least 70% here in West Ventura County. My question for you is, how do you see realtors both individually in the community as just individual members and as an organization? And what can we do to help be part of the solution in solving Ventura County's housing problems?
I think realtors play two very important roles. One is that realtors are so intimately involved in the housing sector here. They help so many people buy and sell housing. They talk to so many people who are dealing with housing transactions. And I think they hear a lot about ways that we as local government can make the process easier. And so that's one thing, is just the feedback that we get from realtors who are on the ground on a daily basis, solely focused on housing. And I think we can learn a lot from realtors. So it's important that realtors share their stories so that we as local government can make necessary tweaks and improvements. But I think a second very important function that realtors play is in education. We have to be able to better educate and explain to the public the importance of smart growth, the importance of more housing, and what it really means. It's not just, sticks in the ground that you see near you. Why are those sticks important? Who are those sticks going to house? It's oftentimes our teachers, our nurses, our police officers, our firefighters,
100%.
It's people who we so rely on as a county to make it a better place to live. And I tell people, when you live in a community where your teachers and your nurses are having a hard time affording housing, that's scary.
We held a series of focus groups a few weeks ago where we had the personnel director from CMH, County Medical, come and talk to us about the difficulties that he has finding housing for people who work at the hospital. And he talked about how it used to be, your custodians, your cafeteria workers, people at the sort of proverbial bottom end of the totem pole. But he said, now, dude, it's like nurses, people who make good money can't find a place to live. Now, part of that is they have a rule, I'm told, where you got to live within 20 minutes of the hospital. But if we were building like we should, that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, but I think one I always try to find the silver lining in things. And I think one of the silver linings that I've seen recently is that everybody is starting to see the need. Our school districts are starting to see the need. And I think a lot of our school districts are focused on teacher housing. Mm-hmm. A lot of our companies are focused on employee housing. It's not a secret anymore that we're in a real housing crisis. And that's good. That's really good. But I think realtors can really play a role in educating the public. Because I always joke, realtors seem to know everybody. They're the most connected people I know, and they're often very respected. And so I think they have a real strong voice to use here locally, because it's going to be a real education campaign. The anti-growth, the NIMBYs, they're very vocal, they're very loud, and it's going to take a real campaign, I think, for a lot of us to explain to the public why housing is so important and why we can't be afraid of it.
Well, I agree with that. And, we're in the process of launching a housing campaign here in Ventura County this summer. You're going to help out with that. We're very excited to have you on board. That's part of what this podcast is designed to do, is educate the public on how these issues actually work, because there's so much misinformation that floats around our communities, and we all need to be singing from the same songbook. So on a lighter note, we're coming up into the summer here. What are you looking forward to most in the summer for Ventura County? What do you think makes Ventura County most special during the summer? To me, it took a little bit of an adjustment because we have the Maigret and then the June gloom. So Summer doesn't really start until like July 4th or so, and like in Texas, it starts like in like the end of February. So what are you most excited about coming up this summer, Matt?
Well, I always say Ventura summer is September, October, November, my favorite months of the year. But this summer, I think one thing coming up in the next week or two is the X Games coming to Ventura. I think it's something that has really put Ventura on the map. Having such world-class games here in Ventura really highlights the amazing community we have. Obviously the fair's coming back. I love the fair. The fair rodeo is one of my favorite days. Taking my family to the local rodeo.
Oh, they've got all the '90s acts coming back. That's going to be pretty cool.
Good lineup. My favorite part about Ventura in the summer is just being outdoors.
Yeah.
It's once the June gloom leaves, I feel like July through November, it's just such good weather and
perfect
beach days, hiking days. Yeah. I look forward to it every year.
Well, one thing that's interesting, about the weather, right? Like again, when I lived in Texas, I'd either the night before or the morning of on some day, check the weather report, see what's going, how hot's it going to be, when's it going to get hot. Dude, I don't check the weather here.
I would challenge anybody. We have such amazing world-class hiking here in Ventura County. Go explore a trail you've never been to.
You can be, so I've lived here for a year. I've been hiking for a year. I'm still finding trails that I've never been to.
Just Google it. Google 10 trails in Ventura County and go somewhere you've never been. Go into the Ojai Valley, the Santa Monica Mountains, the Sespe backcountry. There's just natural beauty here that is unparalleled. I think a lot of us don't recognize how lucky we are to have that in our backyard.
Truly blessed. Well, Matt, do you have anything that you'd like to leave the audience with today?
No, I just, again, really appreciate you having me, being able to talk about this. There's a lot of work left to do, and it's always been a privilege of mine to work with local realtors and working on those challenges together. And so excited to keep working.
Well, you've always been an advocate for housing and an advocate for smart and pragmatic policy in our community. So we always have been thrilled to be behind you. We're thrilled to have you on board on this housing campaign. So that's going to do it for us today. I appreciate our audience being with us. I appreciate Matt being with us. If you're enjoying the program, remember to like and subscribe, and we will be back with our next episode next time. In the meantime, have a good one, and we'll see you later. Thank you.